So, you know how it's usually dudes out there playing the whole chasing game, trying to win over the ladies?
That's weird because I think that your friend Hannah is really sexy.
Oh my God. You did not just say that.
Well, flip the script because in some parts of the world, it's the ladies who are on the hunt. There are countries where women are straight up desperate to find a guy. And why's that? It's simply because there are way more women than men in those places. Now picture this. You've got women hitting their 40s and still flying solo because finding a dude is like looking for a needle in a haystack. Sounds wild, right? Welcome to countries like Russia. According to the data from Global Data, in 2021, there were 86.3 dudes for every 100 ladies in Russia. That's a surplus of women, with females making up 53.55% of the population compared to 46.45% dudes. So, if you're into Russian women, now's your chance to shine. But, let's talk numbers. Back in '94, only 3.8% of dudes and 7.4% of ladies were riding solo. Fast forward to 2019, those numbers jumped to 4.7% of guys and a whopping 10.4% of gals still searching for their happily ever after. And if you're wondering why, blame it on history, folks. World War II took a massive toll on men, leaving a gap that even decades later hasn't quite filled up. And Russian women are outliving the guys. In 2021, women were living up to 75.6 years, while the fellas were clocking out at just 64.2 years. Why the gap? Well, it's all about the risky business. Russian dudes are more prone to risky behaviors like downing a little too much vodka or getting into some gnarly accidents. The second country is Ukraine. In 2024, Ukraine's rocking a gender ratio of 84 dudes for every 100 ladies. Crunch the numbers, and you've got 17.69 million guys against a whopping 20.58 million ladies. If you're asking why, well, the ongoing conflict with Russia has taken a heavy toll on Ukraine's male population. We're talking about a war zone where the casualties are predominantly men, though there's no concrete data yet. Estimates suggest that at least 31,000 Ukrainian soldiers have laid down their lives in the battle against Russia. And let's be real, most of those fallen heroes are men, right? But even before this whole war saga, Ukraine's gender ratio was already out of whack. Rewind to World War II, when Ukraine, just like its buddy Russia, suffered massive male casualties. Fast forward to today, and we're still feeling the ripple effects. Birth rates haven't quite balanced out the loss. Now, let's talk about habits. Ukrainian fellas seem to be cut from the same cloth as their Russian counterparts. We're talking risky behavior, like smoking and hitting the bottle a bit too hard. And you know what that means? Ukrainian ladies are outliving the dudes. In 2021, women were clocking in at a solid 75.5 years, while the guys were trailing behind at 66.6 years. The third country is Belarus. Just like its neighbors Russia and Ukraine, Belarus is also dealing with a gender gap situation. In 2022, the World Bank reported that over half of Belarus's population, 53.96% to be exact, is made up of females. Now, let's break down the numbers. According to statisticstimes.com, in 2021, Belarus had 87.2 dudes for every 100 ladies. Crunch those digits, and you've got a surplus of 640,000 more females than males. It's not as drastic as Ukraine, but still enough to leave Belarusian women feeling like there's a shortage of eligible bachelors. But why's that? Well, rewind to World War II when the Soviet Union, including Belarus, took some serious hits. The loss of life among men during the war hasn't been fully offset by birth rates, leaving a lasting impact on the population dynamics. And just like their Russian and Ukrainian counterparts, Belarusian dudes seem to have a thing for risky business too. We're talking behaviors like smoking and maybe hitting the bottle a bit too hard. And guess what? That's leading to women in Belarus outliving the guys. And Belarus has also seen some folks packing their bags and heading out in search of greener pastures. Emigration plays a part too, with some Belarusian men seeking job opportunities elsewhere. Alright, let's keep the gender gap journey going. Fam, next stop, Portugal and Estonia. So, in Portugal, there were 2 million guys and 2.2 million gals in Portugal. That's at least 200,000 more women. That might not sound like much compared to some of the Eastern European countries we've talked about, but trust me, that's a whole lot of people. But why is Portugal's gender scale tipping towards the ladies? It's not about wartime casualties like in Eastern Europe, but more about the long-term trend of immigration. In Portugal, young Portuguese men seeking job opportunities abroad, leaving a bit of a gap back home. Much like Cristiano Ronaldo, I guess. So, while there is still competition for ladies to get partner there, but it's not as big a deal as in places like Russia or Ukraine. Now, let's jet over to Estonia. Here, the male population clocks in at 47.58%, while the ladies hold the majority at 52.42%. Crunch those numbers, and you've got 64,000 more females than males. If you asking why, well, Estonia's history as part of the Soviet Union left it with a similar gender gap story to Ukraine and Belarus. Plus, Estonia's relatively low birth rate ain't helping to balance out the scales. But the cool thing is, Estonia's got this policy called baby salary, where women can snag 12 months of paid leave during the birth of a child. Even men can also apply for parental leave. If you're from the US, you might be scratching your head because maternity leave ain't guaranteed nationwide, let alone paternity leave. Yep, it's just a dream. The next country is El Salvador. In 2022, there's a whopping 300,000 more ladies than gents in El Salvador. With a population of 6.34 million, that breaks down to 3.32 million women with only 3 million men. I can say that it's quite significant. If you asking why, well, it's all about life expectancy. Salvadoran women are outliving the fellas, with a gap of 10 years. In 2022, women were living up to 76 years, while the guys were lagging behind at just 66 years. And what's causing this gap? Again, risky business, my friends. Think gang violence and substance abuse, not to mention the impact of the 12-year civil war from 79 to 92. Plus, emigration to the US is also taking its toll on the male population. It's a whole mix of factors shaping the gender landscape in El Salvador. Now, let's jet over to Lithuania. Lithuania also has a significantly larger population of women than men. With a population of 2.8 million, the ladies are holding strong at 1.5 million, outnumbering the guys by 203,000. But why's that? Well, history plays a big role here. Just like other Eastern European countries, stint in the Soviet Union definitely left its mark, with significant male casualties during wartime. And here's a harsh reality. Lithuanian men seem to like a more risky life. From murder and suicide to accidents and even frostbite. For some reason, this is more experienced by men. Plus, there's a new twist. Ukrainian refugees are adding to the mix, with 54,000 people coming from Ukraine, 32,000 of whom are women, boosting Lithuania's population. The next country is Japan. In 2022, Japan is rocking a population of 64.2 million women and 61 million men. Now, if you're into numbers, that's a female population making up about 51.18% of the total. But by 2024, we're seeing even more women coming into the mix, with a boost of 3.45 million compared to the guys. That's right. The ladies are taking over, with a female population increase of 51.41%, and this gap is expected to continue to increase even until 2030. This is because Japan's birth rate is worrying. The low birth rate in Japan means that this gender gap problem will continue in Japan. Apart from that, it's also about who's living longer. Japanese women also have a better life expectancy than Japanese men. This is a trend in many developed countries due to advances in healthcare and lifestyle factors. While we already know that Japan has a low birth rate overall, the sex ratio at birth, number of boys born compared to girls, is slightly skewed towards boys. However, this evens out and eventually surpasses due to the longer lifespan of women. Now, let's talk about attractiveness. Japanese women, absolutely stunning. And with a surplus of 3.45 million of them, don't you want to go there? The next country with an overpopulation of women is Brazil. Let's be honest here, who doesn't find Brazilian women attractive? According to the 2022 demographic census, Brazil's got a surplus of ladies like never before. We're talking 110.8 million women and 106.8 million men, with women making up 50.93% and men 49% of the population, respectively. That's a cool 4 million more women than men there. In Brazil, women are not only stealing the show in terms of population, but they are also outliving the guys. Women in Brazil tend to stick around longer, with an average age of 35.7 years old compared to 33.6 years old for the dudes. But why? Well, unfortunately, Brazil has a tough side too. High rates of violence mean young men are more likely to be affected by homicides and accidents. Plus, let's be real, guys tend to gravitate towards riskier stuff, whether it's crazy jobs or adrenaline-pumping activities, which can lead to, well, you know, a shorter life expectancy. So if Japan or Eastern Europe seem a bit too far, why not consider Brazil? Trust me, you won't be disappointed. But the final country is the good old United States of America. Since 1946, the US has actually had more women than men, with a population sex ratio of 98 males per 100 females in 2021. According to data from Statistical Times, there are about 3.48 million more women than men in the US. That may not seem like a huge number compared to our massive 333 million population. But hey, it's definitely something to think about, right? And get this, as people get older, the percentage of women in the population starts to climb even higher. Why? Well, it's all about those longer lifespans. Men tend to take on riskier stuff, whether it's dangerous jobs or other adrenaline-fueled activities, which unfortunately can lead to a shorter life expectancy. So ladies end up outnumbering the guys. But here's where it gets really interesting. In United States, more women tend to live in major East Coast counties, while the West Coast tends to have more men. And why's that? It's partly because of certain industries and institutions that have a gender imbalance. Places like San Diego, with its military bases, or tech hubs like San Francisco and Seattle, where men dominate the workforce. But among US counties with big populations, places like Baltimore, New York, Atlanta, and Philly have more women than men, while cities like Austin and San Francisco skew towards the guys. And get this, the gender ratio can get pretty imbalanced, with some regions having way more men than women, especially in places like Colorado Springs or Austin, where industries like agriculture and energy play a big role. Even though the birth rate for men is slightly higher than for women, by the time man hit 30, that ratio flips. Why? Because of course, men tend to have higher mortality rates across the board, from violence to drinking to smoking, you name it. But hey, I want to hear from you. Do you feel the effects of gender imbalances in your country? Let me know in the comments below. And while you're at it, if you're still searching for that special someone, maybe one of these countries with more women than men is the place for you. Until next time, peace out.